So we have our stars and we have our constellations. Now we're able to sort of get a bit of a sense for where we are. What are we looking at? I can say, oh, okay, so this constellation right here looks like Orion. But then immediately it's like, that's not what it looks like in the sky. You know, this whatever star this is way too big, and I can barely see some of the stars that on Orion are from Earth are quite bright. And so, for example, just to double check, we could say take our main camera, and I could zoom in and say, is there a star there? Yes. So the constellation is pointing to a real star that's there. It's just way too small. Every star is being rendered based on how far away it is from Earth, which is an oversimplification of how stars appear in the sky. Because as well as distance, or as well as you can think of a star's brightness as the significant value over its distance. So, for example, there's some really big stars that are really bright, even though they're further away from a small star that's closer. So we're going to look at magnitude and how to implement magnitude in our setup. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that our star info classes have their magnitude recorded. Then we're going to figure out how to put that information into the mesh, so then we can access it in our shader. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up our coding project. Star info. Okay. So yeah, so this is our project. We've got our HYG ID, our HIP ID, Hipparcos ID. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add two new floats. It's going to be a public float, apparent magnitude. This is a magnitude from Earth, or how bright a star appears from Earth. And there's another float that we'll add here, and this is going to be our absolute magnitude. Absolute magnitude, which is magnitude, actual magnitude. How big this? In fact, it is specifically. It's how bright would that star be if you were 10 parsecs away from it. Okay, so now let's figure out which lines of our star data we need to get that from. I'm going to open up database HYG reference in Markdown preview. Scroll up. Okay, so we have lines. Okay, lines 13 is the apparent, lines 14 is the absolute, and the value type is a float. Okay, so we can say apparent magnitude equals pass utility dot safe float pass, just in case it's not recorded, and that's going to be a lines 13. And the absolute magnitude will be lines 14. All right, so now that that's recorded in our star info class, let's have a look at how to get this into our mesh. I'm going to make just a bit of a note on cross-platform meshes. I've got the intention of eventually putting this on an Android device. So where sometimes, if for example, if we were developing for PC, we could say something like this: mesh.uv2, uv3, uv4, uv5, etc. Usually, if you were to pass data into a mesh that's not the standard mesh data, you'd use one of these further on indices, you know, that aren't traditionally reserved for something else. The thing is that that's not going to work on Android. The Android development